Hey guys, let's go over the 4 exercises for today, beginning with review C on page 783. Number 1, we want a semicolon after fence, and that's because it's separating 2 independent clauses. Number 2, we need a colon after home. This is introducing a list. And if you notice, there is the word following in that sentence, but you don't have to have the word follows or following. As long as it's implied that a list is following it, you can have a colon. Because the club has run out of funds, the following supplies must be brought from home. So we have the colon and then the introduction of the list. What you want to be careful of, just because you have a list doesn't mean you need a colon. That colon has to separate the list from a complete sentence. Okay, so if the list is part of the sentence, you wouldn't put a colon in there because it would break up something that should not be broken up. Right? Remember, these colons are a strong separation. They're almost as strong as a period. Number 3, I enjoy the following hobbies. Colon, and then we have a list of colon. That was a lot like number 2. Number 4, other jobs take too much time. For example, okay, so here we need a semicolon after the word time because 2 independent clauses are being joined. That's one way to say it. Or that little transitional expression, for example, when it's at the beginning of a sentence, you introduce it with a semicolon because it'll be connected to the previous one. So most of the time that you see for example, or however, or rather, it's got a semicolon in front of it and a comma after it. And on the ACT, that's probably how they will test your knowledge of a semicolon, is using one of those expressions. Number 5, we want a semicolon after water. And this is just separation of 2 independent clauses that are closely related. Number 6, we can call these conventional uses. I think you guys are probably very familiar with these, right? Chapter and verse from the Bible. 7. Okay, here's a good example of introduction of a list, but there is no word like follows or following. In his speech, Dr. Fujikawa quoted from several poets. And now here they are, and that's what the colon does. It says, here's the list. Okay, number 8. This is a lot like number, we have number 4. That little expression, however, it's introducing a new independent clause, so we have a semicolon in front of it, or after the word right, I guess is how I wrote it. Okay, number 9. This is a great example of a semicolon being used in items in a series. When we went over commas, we know that if you've got a series of things, usually you separate them with commas. However, if the things within that list already have commas in it, that could be very confusing, right? You end up with a long list of commas. You can't tell what separates from what's supposed to be connected to something else. So the semicolon helps to show a stronger separation. So this is sort of the semicolon is actually being used like a comma in a list. So we want it after the semicolon after Hampshire and Pennsylvania. And then the first colon after presidents it's introducing a list. Number 10, these are conventional uses for time. And then still, we want that semicolon after still because it separates 2 independent clauses that are closely related in meaning. Always want to include that part. Okay, let's move on to post-test A on 784. Same idea here. We're choosing between colons, semicolons, where they go, and why we put them there. So number 1, we have night, semicolon, separating 2 independent clauses is one reason, or you've got the transitional expression instead in there, just like however or for example, like we saw in the other exercise. Number 2, okay, this is a list of things, and the list of items contains commas within the items. So we want the semicolon to separate the items. So they're going to perform at the Civic Center on Tuesday, January 15th, at Kiwanis Club on Saturday, January 19th, etc. And then a third. So you've got 3 items. So you need 2 things to separate them. Commas are not going to be enough because it would just be confusing. It'd make like 5 or 6 commas in that sentence. Semicolons do the job better. Number 3 is fine the way it is. Let me see if I want to explain anything in that. Nope. Straightforward sentence. You have a list of things that are separated by commas. Number 4. Introduction of a list after the word world. So we want a colon there. Number 5. A semicolon after the word pueblos that separates 2 independent clauses. Now remember, by separating 2 independent clauses, what you're doing is you're separating 2 sentences. So you could put something else in there. What could you use other than a semicolon? I know you all just said periods. Right, periods could work. What the semicolon does, if you want to suggest to the reader that these 2 ideas are pretty closely related, like one follows from the other, then you put in the semicolon. So it's helpful, but it's not absolutely necessary. If you went, you could pretty much go through the rest of your writing career and maybe get away with never using a semicolon. You could write around it. Period does the job of a semicolon. Commas a lot of times will do the job of separating things. It's more for, it's a sort of a newer, more nuanced type of separation. I like the semicolon personally, but I'm an English teacher too. Number 6, we have a conventional use. If you want to call this, I don't know what you wrote on your paper, but Bible verse, that's fine. Is there just one in number 6? Yeah. Number 7, same idea. We have a conventional use in 7 o'clock. We have a semicolon after the word TV because it separates independent clauses. Number 8, okay, we have a semicolon. I put in a semicolon after the word fans. I think that's helpful because you've got 2 independent clauses joined by the conjunction and. But I think they're separate enough in meaning, and we have a couple of commas floating through that sentence anyway. If I were writing this, I would use a semicolon just to show that there's a clear break between these 2 big ideas. However, if you left it out and called it correct, and just left a comma in, that would be okay too. 9 is correct as it's written. Back up. I'm going to double check this. Yeah, that's correct as it's written. However, if you took the semicolon out and put in a comma instead, I think you could do that also. This is a lot like number 8, where it's sort of optional. The semicolon is helpful, but not absolutely necessary. Okay, last one, number 10. Follows, and then a colon. Now, I think what they want to do is catch you up and try to get you to put in semicolons. You don't need semicolons here because these items are pretty clear as they are. 2.4 miles in the ocean, bicycling 112 miles, running 26.2 miles. Those don't need any other punctuation. There are no commas floating in there that might confuse things. So you don't need semicolons separating those. But you do need the colon after follows. All right, so close that one. Go over to the Red Book. And page 75. Okay, so we're looking at which form to choose, and these are all going to be either singular or plural, and then we need to find the word. And there might be a couple of options here, so I'll talk it through, and you can judge whether or not you get the point or whatever. But something in the sentence determines whether it's the singular choice or the plural choice. So number 1 was, neither is the word that determines the number. Neither is one of those indefinite pronouns that's always, or used as a conjunction here, neither nor. It's always singular. So neither separates car and Laurel's car out and treats them as singular things. So when you see neither or either, you want to be thinking singular. Number 2, have and parts, or some parts. plural, both of them plural. Some of these are just going to sound correct, and if you choose them that way, that's fine. I really want you to go through the process of thinking why something is plural, right? It's connected to something else. The verb is going to be connected to something else, or some conjunction has joined things together to make it plural. I want you to be thinking through those issues. Organize. Union and faculty are joined together by the conjunction and. So you could have put the conjunction and in there as a reason. That would make sense. Number 4, hikes. It's singular because it was just one man, one old man. Number 5, are, and the paintings are in a special room, not the museum. So those are both plural. Number 6, doesn't goes with the word it. Both of them singular. Number 7, were, and this is agreeing with you. Number 8, goes, singular, and it agrees with the singular round. Number 9, were, agrees with the plural people. Both of those are plural. Number 10, both of those are singular. Was, either is the word that determines that it's was. If it was both my suitcase and camera bag, it'd be plural, but it's either one or the other, not both. So it's singular. Number 11, have and children. You could also say all, because all is one of those. Remember we did the pizza test in that video? All is one of those that could go either way, depending on what it refers to. All of the pizza was eaten. That would be a singular all. In this case, it's referring to children. Number 12, both is always plural, so we want are. 13, doesn't is singular because Andrew is singular. Number 14, are is plural because lunchboxes is plural. Number 15, have is plural because anything and anything, that word and joins those two together. That makes it plural. And they tried to throw you off here because if you were paying attention earlier, anything is a singular pronoun. But they joined them together, two anythings, made it plural. Number 16, is a singular because mother and father are being joined by neither nor, which is always singular. 17, have is singular. And this one's tricky. Climate as well as the climate as well as the cultivating. As well as is being used like an and there. It's joining the two together. But you may run into a situation where it's subordinate, where the second part is subordinate to the first. For example, let's say we had commas around as well as the cultivating. Imagine there are commas around that. The climate, as well as the cultivating, has an effect on the crop. That would be singular, because as well as the cultivating would be parenthetical, like it's just sort of inserted in there. But the way it's written here with no commas, as well as is acting like a conjunction. It's pulling the two together and making it plural. That can be a little bit tricky. They're not going to ever test you on something like that on the ACT. It's a little too nuanced. Number 18, need is plural because painter and playwright are joined together. And then 19, this is similar to 17, the grocer, no less than the wholesaler, is responsible. This is a weird rule that I hardly ever run into this, but when there's an affirmative and a negative, an affirmative and a negative, so you have one thing that's set up as being positive and the other negative. The positive is one that determines the verb. If you never remember this rule for the rest of your life, it doesn't matter, but I think I should explain this. So the grocer, no less than the wholesaler, is responsible. No less than the wholesaler sort of drops that phrase into a subordinate position, so it's not as important as grocer. English is crazy, I know. Okay, number 20, both the corn and the wheat. That should be clear, right? Both is always plural. And if you haven't figured that out, you got the word and. Corn and wheat are being joined together as plural things. So we want have. Okay, that's Skilder, page 75. Let's jump over to 79. And we'll be done. 14 of these, I think. Okay, number 1. Let's see. Who refers to director. It's a person. Number 2. His refers back to every boy. We always treat that as a singular thing. And these might sound, most of these will sound fine, and you pick it just out of sound, but again, I want you to go through the process. Number 4, its refers back to company. We treat a company as a singular thing most of the time. It can act as a collective noun and be plural, but in this case it's singular. Number 4, their. Now you could have written the word none also, because none is one of those things that go either way. Run the pizza test on it. But in this case it's referring to the plural organizations, so it makes their plural. Number 5, one must do one's best. That should have been easy, right? They line up. They're almost the same word. Number 6, has is singular because one is singular. So in this sentence we don't use the word friends to determine it, because we're only referring to one friend. So both are singular. Number 7, another pizza test here. Most can go both ways. It refers to the plural students, so we want the plural verb have. Number 8, its is what we want. It refers back to news, which sounds like it's plural, but we treat that as a singular thing, and you do it too. If you say, the news is on TV. Let's see, the news is on TV now, right? News, it sounds like it's plural, it's got an S at the end, but we treat it like it's one thing. It's like one event. Number 9, scissors, we treat as plural things, even though they're one unit, one thing that you'd hold in your hand. We treat them like they're plural. So they. Oh, look at that. I did a new little effect. I got bored. Number 10, there. Oh, this one's tricky. That's why I have the little asterisk there. Okay. There is referring back to the Board of Education as a collective noun. The board acted like a they, like a bunch of people, because they all had to vote individually. This is tricky because, let's see, earlier we said the company was a singular thing. Board of Education is kind of like a company, right? It's a group of people. But a group of people can act as a unit, as one thing, or a group of people can act like a they, like a plural thing. So you have to sort of figure out what situation you're looking at to determine if it's singular or plural. Collective nouns can be a little bit tricky that way. Okay, 11. His, and refers back to the word every. When we use that little adjective, we single it out. It's kind of like the word each, or the pronoun each. Both of them are singular. Number 12, let's say the established international community had it collapsed, and its members, right? The community, again, a collective noun, but it's like one thing. It had members. So its, oh, you know what? There's a second one in here. Oh, there's a third. Boy, I rushed through this. Okay. Sorry, you're going to have to just listen to the other ones on number 12. Had collapsed, and its members found themselves at a crossroads in their history. Yeah, that's right, in their history. It's a bunch of plurals, except for the very first one, which referred to the group itself. Do you see what happened here? You had a group that acted as one thing, and then it collapsed, and it became a bunch of people. So the other two were plurals. It makes sense. Okay, number 13. This might be the one out of these 14 that really sounds weird when it's correct. Each of the girls brought her lunch to the picnic. We probably would say, just informally, this is how we speak, each of the girls brought their lunch to the picnic. But when you have the word each, it singles the girls out. It doesn't matter how many girls there are. Each one brought her lunch. Didn't bring anybody else's, just her. So anytime you see the word each, it's not a pronoun that can go either way. It's always singular. And if they test you on the ACT, they will test you on pronoun agreement, but you're likely to see this particular word used, the word each. And what they will do is have the word each early on in a sentence. It'll be a long sentence with a bunch of phrasing in between each and the verb later on in the sentence. And they're trying to trip you up, and there'll be a lot of plurals in there so that you'll want to pick there instead of her, or you want to pick the plural verb instead of the singular verb. If you remember one thing out of this exercise, it's the word each, that it's always singular. Okay, last one. His or her. We want this to be singular, but we don't know the gender, so we use his or her. And then swimmer, right? Swimmer doesn't tell us anything about the gender of the subject. So, all right, that's it for today, guys. Thanks. That was a long video. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.